I heard today is a very special day. I cannot believe you're doing this on your birthday. Happy birthday, Mellody Hobson.
Oh, thank you. My quarantine birthday.
I know. Can we have some wine? Can we have some champagne? Can we toast to the screen? Can we sing the Stevie Wonder version? Can we do like a line dance?
To you right now. Listen, I have it so much better than so many people, so I'm so grateful. But, you know, this is not, to me, like one of these big celebration modes. Yeah. I'm happy to be alive.
Yes.
So grateful, but, you know, head down, just doing what we got to do.
Back to your happy birthday. I hope that you are able to stay healthy and well, and that you're able to do something fun and relaxing because you work so hard for us. For those of you who do not know, this is a master class with someone who I greatly admire, have admired from afar for so long. Mellody Hobson is a financial guru. She's been advising so many of us through the pages of magazines that we read and radio shows we listen to, like Tom Joyner up until last year. Sits on boards that, you know, of companies where we all consume their products or we bank with them. And more than anything else, a philanthropist that gives back to people who look like us and are trying to do great things with their lives every single day. So it was just an honor earlier this year when I got to meet you at Angela's cycling class. And then just to be able to sit down with you since then has been such a joy. So first, thank you so much for joining me on your birthday. It will not air on your birthday, but they can still celebrate you all month long and all year long. So thank you, Mellody.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Boy, do we miss being in that spin class.
Oh, man. An Army is so good. You know what's so funny? Angela did a master class with me that was boot camp. We taped yesterday. Mellody, I have not been working out. When I tell you I am inching along here, like I am sore. I am so sore. It's so bad. I'm like, I'm out of shape and I've been eating real good in here, okay?
Well, I said to my team the other day, we started a step challenge at Ariel. And I said, I got 2 questions for you. You coming back fat or fit? Simple.
You were like, you got 2 options. Have you been working out every day?
I have been really hard.
Mellody.
Yeah, hard.
How do you just, like, so before we get into all the financial stuff, how do you keep it together? Like, I feel like there's not anything that you do poorly. In fact, you know, Angela says all the time, the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. When I think of that saying, you two are probably the first people that come to mind. And I'm like, I'm walking around here with all kinds of hypocrisy. Like, that is not my truth, right? So I want to know how you do that.
Well, I have to tell you, I just have always been really disciplined and focused. And I need the adrenaline in the morning. Mm-hmm. I need those endorphins to get my brain to work. I don't feel as good without it. Mm-hmm. And so I have to be, I need the time. Yeah. So if I can't spin, I have a Peloton, but I don't like it as much as being inside of a spin class. Mm-hmm. I do the treadmill, I do the Versa Climber, I do the Stairmaster. They're all hard, but I really do commit myself to that. It's really just, I do it for me. It's my own time in my brain in the morning, really early.
Wow. What time do you get up?
Well, I have to tell you, I have a different coronavirus wake-up hour now. I'm waking up a little bit later. So right now I'm waking up and getting in the gym by 5, but normally I do 4.
Did you see my face? I'm like, okay, Mellody. I'm like, I'm getting up at 7:45. Like, yes, and staying up till 2. I'm like, my hours are
Oh, yeah, I can't do late. I'm one of those people I can't do. I'm not, they say, are you a lark or an owl? I'm a lark.
I'm definitely an owl. Like, yeah. I'm like, by 9 o'clock, I'm like, hey, where's the party at?
And I'm already like tucking myself in.
Okay, I get it. So we talked about your birthday. I also want to ask you how many jobs you have. You have so many jobs, I feel like. You have all the jobs.
Well, it's funny. Technically, I've only ever had one job. I've only worked at Ariel Investments my entire career. And
Yeah.
I went there when I graduated from college in 1991. And they say I'm the only person from my graduating class from Princeton who has had the same work phone number since 1991.
Wow.
I'm the only person out of 1,100 people. But when I think about all the jobs I have a lot of jobs.
I was gonna say, you said technically. I was like, let's dig into that technically.
That's the technically in terms of what my business card says.
Yeah.
But in terms of all the other things I do, I sit on a couple of boards. I'm vice chair of Starbucks, and I'm on the board of JP Morgan. And and that's this morning, for example, we had a JP Morgan board meeting. My time, it started at 6 a.m. So you asked why I wake up early.
Yeah.
And then I run a big nonprofit in Chicago as the chair called After School Matters, which is the largest after school program in the world for students. We serve somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30,000 students a year. We're the largest employer of teens in Chicago every summer. Last year, just under 14,000 teens work for us. So very, very big. And then I have we're building a museum in LA that I'm co-chairing with my husband. I mean, there are a lot of jobs, but I enjoy it all.
Yeah.
I've done a lot, obviously, in media for a long, long time. ABC, then CBS. I mean, just so many things. Tom Joyner just ended, which was so sad. I did that for so many years. So
that's the thing. I wonder if people watch this and be like, "Oh, that's Mellody," right? Like,
no,
you used to do something for Black Enterprise too, right?
Yeah, I still write for Black Enterprise. Yeah, I write for Black Enterprise. I mean, we do a lot of things.
So that's where I first saw you, and I was like, "Oh, I need to learn money." Shamefully, Mellody, I have not learned money yet, so we need to dig into that.
Well, that's what we're here to talk about.
Yes, it is. So I want to first. I just think that, because you're such a financial guru and advisor and managing assets for municipalities and all of these things that you guys do, and pensions and all the things that
and individuals.
Yes.
Just with mutual funds for any person who has as little as $50 a month.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to start. But I think that for a lot of us, and I'll own this for sure, you start talking about saving and relationships with money, just my shoulders get tense, and I'm like, oh my God, because there's so much to unpack. It is truly psychological. And I think one thing that would be super beneficial to those of us who have not, been in a career where we're managing money or doing any of that, to talk about your own financial narrative, your own relationship with money growing up, and then for people to see how much it shifted as you've gotten older is tremendous. So if we could talk a little bit about that would be awesome.
Well, I've told this story many times that it's no accident that I work in the investment business, because when I was younger, really when I was a child, I was desperate to understand money, desperate. And I tell people, I put the emphasis on understand. It wasn't make it, it was to understand it. I thought if I understand how money works, I'll be fine. Because when I was growing up, I was the youngest of 6 kids. And I was really young in my family. My older siblings are a couple decades older than me. And so they often told me I wasn't planned, and sometimes told me I wasn't their sibling, to just really get in my head. But my mom was a single mom, and she worked really, really, really hard. But we just oftentimes were in very tough financial situations. And so we were the family that had the check on the wall at the grocery store that bounced, where you saw your own name. We were the family that got evicted, or, often got our phone disconnected or our lights turned off. And we sometimes lived in my mom. She was in the real estate business, and she'd have these abandoned buildings, and we lived in parts of them where we'd heat up water on hot plates and things like that. So I really spent a lot of time in my head thinking about money. And my mom never hid anything from me, which was a blessing and a curse. But it was actually ended up being a blessing. So I knew when we were in a tough situation. She never, ever, ever sugarcoated it. And so as a result of that, I ended up being an intern at Ariel Investments between my sophomore and junior year at Princeton. And I knew I found the career for myself because I wanted to understand how it worked. And I wanted to make sure that I had that understanding so that I could be financially secure. And that was really the impetus for my journey. And then once I got all of the understanding, about how the financial system works, how money can work for you or work against you for you in terms of compound interest being one of the greatest things ever. Warren Buffett, the greatest investor of all times, calls compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. When your money you can be gaining interest on top of interest. That's an amazing thing. But how interest can work against you with high credit card debt and things like that, where you find yourself not able to dig out of a hole. So once I got all of those foundational learnings together, I became obsessed with the idea of teaching. Yeah. And I'm like this financial evangelist because of it, wanting to explain to people what I learned so that they can lead a better life. Because one thing I know for sure, money becomes, the shortage of money, the lack of it ultimately affects your health. It affects your mental health. It's something that is hugely, hugely debilitating when you are fretting about it.
Mm-hmm. And that's so true. It's interesting now to see the number of people who, as we now kind of touch on what's happening with the stimulus package, with the CARES Act, the number of people who are like, when do I get this check again? And then like the comments I'm getting now, Mellody, I'm not the financial expert, but they expect me to know the ins and outs of like legislation. What's going on? How does this impact us? When am I going to get my check? And somebody sent a message yesterday saying, I'm a dependent for my parents, which means I'm not going to get any of this money. I'm not eligible. And I'm like, oh my God, there are all these young people now that are just realizing like this money they thought was going to, kind of hold them over, they're not going to see.
No, if you're a dependent and someone claims you on their tax returns, you don't get a separate check. You
think about the number of young people for years, especially in our community, who work jobs to help their parents pay bills. Like they're depending on that. Speaking of being a dependent. So that part I thought was really fascinating for you, Mellody, because you know like the narrative of money. How much does this situation remind you of the economic downturn in 2008?
There are similarities, but it's very, very, very different. Yeah. So 2008 was a financial crisis that was created by our financial system. Mm-hmm. This is a financial crisis that is born out of a health crisis. Mm-hmm. So in many ways, it's also a situation where this financial crisis is born out of the fact that the only way to deal with the health crisis is to completely stop our financial system. So it has been purposefully ground to a total halt. Yeah. It's interesting, Ben Bernanke, who was the former chairman of the Fed, wrote his PhD on the Great Depression. And he came out with an article recently where he said, this is not like the financial crisis. It's more like a natural disaster. Yeah. The economy has fallen off a cliff. So think of like a tsunami or a major snowstorm where everything stops. Nothing can move. Mm-hmm. That is more akin to what has happened. So the economy has fallen off a cliff because nothing can move. And our goal right now, especially with the $2 trillion stimulus, is to build a bridge that will get us to the other side. So it will recover, and it will recover once we can get the machine moving again. That doesn't mean there won't be damage and pain in between. What's unusual about this, it's global. Yeah. It's not one country's problem, it's everyone's problem. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes the magnitude of it so daunting.
Mm-hmm. When you think about just the response time, are there things, like we talk all the time about, maybe especially me because I started on the Hill on the Homeland Security Committee, the difference between a man-made and a natural disaster. And to me, part of the issue was the response time was so slow. Like the uptick on like, oh no, this is a crisis, it's really going to impact a lot of us. There's a part of what we're experiencing that is man-made. So that's where it might be a little bit different than a tsunami or a hurricane, or have even a terrorist attack, in some ways, because we were not responsive and on time.
Well, I don't know, because I think sometimes with a natural disaster, you have some forewarnings of a natural disaster. That's like true. The weatherman might say, if you look at Katrina, we knew the storm was coming. True. So I don't know that I think we're in a moment right now. Blame doesn't work. Like the question is, what do you do to get, looking backwards isn't going to get us anything at this moment. It's all forward looking. I think the $2 trillion stimulus that was passed, which is just so hard to even wrap your brain around what $2 trillion is and what this means. It's so huge. I think that's a down payment on this whole thing. I think that's not going to be the first stimulus bill that we see. So I think we could all talk about, was it too late? Was it too slow? All of those things. The question for me is now, it doesn't matter. What do you do? Getting these checks in the hands of people as fast as possible is urgent, because there's a long time between April 1st, when they probably got their last paycheck. Some of them didn't get one before that. And April 21st or April 15th and the 21st, when those first checks start to go out. And so just thinking through those issues, and then that's still not being enough. I was really pleased to see that the furloughed workers get their full pay for up to 4 months. That was genius. Genius. Because that says we're going to totally tide you over until this whole thing wraps up. And so you don't have those jobs that are displaced. Because it's in the best interest of the company to furlough a worker versus to lay them off, just for a very basic reason. You lay someone off, if they have vacation pay, you have to pay it right back. If you furlough them, everything just is on hold. If you are husbanding cash, the last thing you want to do is start paying it out on things like that. So it also gives everyone a better chance of getting that job back. So I think that was a really smart move.
So a lot of folks have made the point that it's the first of what should be a series of stimulus packages, and I hear you making a similar point now. There was an article that came out in Politico yesterday talking about the rollout of the small business loan piece and how they anticipate banks are like, I don't even know if I want to get involved. Are you going to absolve me of any liability if folks submit one thing, but we didn't have time to vet it and it doesn't stand up? What are your thoughts about that? What are you advising small businesses to do? Or if you were advising a bank, would you say you should be a lender in this program? And here's why. Would you say right now they need some more criteria in place to make this really work? What do you say to that?
Well, obviously I have some visibility on this because I am on the board of a bank. But what I would say to you is very simple. This is really hard. I just want to tell you, you're talking about building the airplane while flying it. The airplane has 4 million pieces in it. This is really hard. So that's not to make any excuses. It's just to say there's an idea, and getting the idea to reality in a system that is this complex with this many millions of people is a challenge. And I think everyone has the right intention, which is get people the money that they need in order to have the lifelines that they need. I think that's in all of our best interests, everyone. But at the same time, you've got to put some standards, some foundation around it that is standardized across the banking system. All these things, nothing has that's being done in real time. So I think we have to give everyone a minute to digest, understand, and to get it done as fast as possible. But just understanding, getting an idea and then rules and then policies, all of that, we're trying to do everything at once. Now, I know for that person who desperately needs the money, that does not sound reassuring. But banks want the American economy working and growing.
It's so interesting because I think that so many banks, and rightfully so, caught a lot of flack for their role in the mortgage bubble bursting in that crisis. And so, I think I actually read the article and was like, this is comforting that they're thinking about that part. What could this mean if we give someone money that they can't afford to pay back? Yes, we want to solve for the crisis, but we also want to make sure that people are viable and able to move through this. And I think to that point, one thing that I would love to go through with you is just my personal stuff. And that's also, it might be partially selfish, but I think it's real. As a Black woman, I'm a part of this cohort of the largest growing group of entrepreneurs in the country. I have my political consulting firm. I have my loan out corp for my appearances. I have people on payroll, and Mellody, I'm scared. You know, like the clients are fine. Like they're going to pay a retainer, but like I supplement my income with speeches and appearances. I had 5 canceled that first week. I have a payment due from a speech I did at the beginning of March that's not here. So like what happens, or what do you advise those of us who are running our own businesses and are like, you learn in this moment, Mellody, that the commodity can't just be you showing up. Like it has, people have been saying that to me, but this particular thing has resonated in a different way. I'm like, I get that now. So I'm like, maybe I need to finish this book proposal. And you know, like even some of this content, like, yes, part of this is like, who have I always wanted to talk to, but we're too busy to sit down or haven't made the schedule where let's really do this. But the other part of it is like, how do I meet people where they're at, provide comfort, provide inspiration, provide knowledge. So I'm trying to not lose my craft, like hone my craft, and also make sure that like the people I look after are okay. My parents, you know, my godsons, my staff. Like, I'm a little worried. Like, what would you?
So here's the first thing. You got to be realistic. Okay. I would sit down and look at the math and be super realistic about what have you bitten off and how much of it can you chew. The appearances will come back. They will. So the question to me is the lifeline you need to get from here to there. Look at what kind of savings you have. If you, this will be a conversation if you haven't done it, but you will in the future as a business, making sure you have lines of credit in place in case you need to draw them down. If you do have those lines of credit in place, I would draw them down now. Just have extra cash, you could pay it back later, but just to have that extra money that is there. I would be very realistic about my staffing and say, you know, if you want to preserve all of those staff members and have them be there for you, everyone may take a temporary pay cut just to tie it, because people are going to be grateful to have a job. The things that maybe you would have been shy about talking about before, Rome is burning. People do get it. So you say, just we're all going to take a little bit less so that we all can get through this together. Those would be the kind of conversations that I think your team would appreciate, because they might be wondering also, she has those 5 speeches got canceled, and is she going to call one day and say she's laid us off? Or if that is realistically something you're going to have to do, be direct with people about it. And maybe lay them off, you furlough them as well, so that they can get the full financial benefit in filing that claim with the U.S. government, which will pay them their full salary for up to 4 months. So these are the things that they may not be there with you during that period, but at least they know that they would be taken care of, and that would be the honorable and smart thing to do. So I think that I would also be looking at, from a budget perspective, what must you absolutely pay? Like, it is not a nice to have, it is a need to have. You have to pay your mortgage or rent. You have to, if your parents are your expense, I would assume that they're like, food is a non-negotiable. Their own housing and shelter may be something. Maybe there's health care related to them. Put all those must pay. Like, I can't in any way streamline this down. Then what are all the nice to haves that you have? And you might have to get really, really sharpen your pencil. And it could be everything from, cable to I don't know what, where you're starting to look at every dollar that goes out and say, I'm going to be reading more books, or I'm going to be, this is the mode that we're in. Now, the good thing about our people, we know how to do this.
Yeah.
We really do. This is not some kind of shock to our system. I know we know when we have to get scrappy, we know how to get scrappy. And unfortunately, that's going to be that time. The times have been very good. So maybe our recession muscle hasn't been, tuned up the way it needs to be. But it does make the point that you've got to look at everything and be realistic. Extreme stress testing. Assume the worst. Assume we don't open on May 1st. Now, maybe we do. Assume it's July. Just assume something, stress us and say, could I make it through? What is my plan A for It ends in May was my plan B. It ends in June with my plan C. It ends in July. For my firm, we did 7 stress tests.
Wow.
7 different ones to say, these are all the scenarios that could play out from the most extreme good to the most extreme bad. And so that we're not just sitting with our head on our hands wondering what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So just go without any speeches for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. What happens?
Man.
And what other opportunities do you have? And it may be a little unsettling, but you will be very settled when you can see the math.
Yeah.
And know what you're dealing with. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. The look at ways are because I'm not comfortable.
But also, there are some other things you can do. You can call your bank. You can call your credit card company.
Mm-hmm.
Explain to them the situation you're in. Banks are understanding the problems with paying a mortgage or rent in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
The credit card companies are understanding the situation. Some are doing, allowing you to skip those payments, the minimum payments, holding back on the mortgage, the student loan, whatever it might be, saying, we understand and you'll make this up later.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem is going to be for some people, if they've received no income and then they come back to a big load of debt, how are they going to deal with that? Let's cross that bridge when we get to it.
Mm.
So if you can, on the front end, negotiate some of these things. Some states have implemented these no eviction standards.
Yeah.
The next 12 months,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot be kicked out of your house.
Yeah.
Some states have said your utilities cannot be disconnected. These are all lifelines for people. And to the extent then you have to make up the payments, oftentimes you can renegotiate the terms. But you're going to have to get, this is a hustle now.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a negative way, like trying to get out of something, but it's going to be really, trying to get people to take less, give you more time, etc. And since everyone has this situation, you're not a lone voice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But work the system. I'd be on the phone with my bank, on the phone with my credit card company, saying, I want to tell you right now, I've got a problem.
Yeah. Wow. Whew. It's so funny because, or not funny, it's more like interesting because part of me feels like having to say that out loud, just it makes it real. And I think the worst thing is like how I've handled this stuff before, which is like not looking at it and thinking if I don't look at it, it'll go away, which is never the case. But it's part of like my own financial narrative. So Mellody, for me, I grew up, my dad used to say we were well off. We were a middle class family. And I was the kid who had credit cards in high school. My dad, I know. Your face is like, what? My dad.
I'll tell you what I think of that, but go on.
No, I can tell you what I think of that.
You shouldn't have had more than one.
I definitely had 2. They were to my favorite stores. And my dad got them for me because he didn't want to take me shopping. So he's like, you go to the Limited and Express. It was a Limited and Express. And I remember thinking that they were like, I used them as gift cards, Mellody, right? Like, I didn't pay them. My dad paid them. So it was like, my relationship with credit, with debt, was that it was a gift card. Like, I really kind of saw it that way until my dad's company went bankrupt. My car got repossessed because I had a brand new car in high school. Car got repossessed. Like, my phone was gone. Like, all of this stuff happened. And then it was about trying to reestablish an image of wealth without having the foundation of wealth to stand on, which is really, the truth of the matter is that's what we always had, right? There was no real savings and cushion and this and that. Like, my parents are renting their home. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm telling all the family business. But they were renting their home, and like my mom was looking at a house they were getting ready to buy because they finally things were going really well. And it was just like the carpet was snatched from under my dad. So then, my mom got me a new car. I didn't have credit cards, but as soon as I went to University of Washington, the first thing I did was run into the devils from Capital One and got a credit card. But, you just do these crazy things, Mellody, to the point of when I was in church, and I've told students this, and they are like looking at me with all the judgment. It's fine. But went to church, was going to church, had my student loans, Mellody. Do you know that I used to pay tithes on my student loan checks?
Wow.
So again, like I did not have any concept for debt. Like none whatsoever. And so I think now, I get it because I've seen like it stack and I'm like, oh my God, like I have to right size this. But things have always happened where like there's, you know, it comes through in the clutch. I know that it's almost like gambling. And what's so funny is my grandmother on my dad's side, she loved playing the slots. My dad loved playing the slots. So I won't play slots. Like I won't do gambling. But what the hell I'm doing is gambling. You know, like I know. Oh, the big thing, the big check is coming, is wish money. I used to always tell my dad, I'm like, you're spending wish money. That's spending it before you have it. You know exactly how it's going to be spent before it gets there. I'm doing the same thing, basically, right? So I'm like, man, I have to change that narrative, but I can't change the narrative if I don't change how I'm living out the story. So I'm just listening to
this. Is really interesting because you are the thing that I'm talking about. We learn all of our money habits from our parents.
Yep.
We don't learn about money and investing in school in America.
Yeah.
You could go to a high school today and take wood shop or auto and not a class on investing, which always leads me to ask people, who's whittling? Who's cleaning their own carburetor, right? No one. And yet you can take those classes, but not foundationally important classes like this. That was my thing about being desperate to understand money. My mother, God bless her soul, would buy Easter dresses before she paid the light bill. Because there's a certain amount of posing that we have in our community. Oof, we want to look prosperous. And I have to tell you, my mom used to get really, really mad at me when I would go out and tell our story about what it was like growing up. She hated it. She was like, I can't believe you're doing this and saying this. And I said, that is my truth. It actually happened. And I spent all those years trying to pretend to people, oh, we just changed our phone number and this, that, and the other. And it was like, we were like barely making it a lot of the times. Wow. But we were starched and pressed. You know us. We'll iron, creases, the whole thing. And so you don't see it, but it's all there. Yeah. And so that's why, you know, these moments of truth financially, you can, there's a fork in the road. You can keep going down the same path. You know, what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Or these can be wake-up calls. And these wake-up calls can be life-changing in such a way that is so affirming. Because I'm telling you, once you take the control, once you don't have the wish money mentality, once you actually have a mentality of, I actually want savings in the bank, it is a game changer. Man. So when I was first started working at Ariel, I had such money fear. So for example, I was so afraid that I wouldn't have a phone. If my phone bill would come and it was $50, I would send in $500.
Wow.
And so my whole theory was, if I lose my job, I have 10 months of phone. Is that, I mean, that tells you a lot, right? Yeah. So all of those things, I would overpay everything because I was so concerned, like if anything goes wrong. I bought an apartment my first year, when I was 24 years old, and I paid it in 3 years. A 30-year mortgage. Wow. Because I was so concerned about, I was like, if everything goes wrong, I just want to know I have a place to live. My 850 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment, that to me was like a mansion. Because I knew every day when I woke up, it was mine and nothing could happen to it. Those were the kind of things that once it it became addictive to me. Like every time it was a little bit more, I was like, I'm on firmer financial ground. I am more secure. And it's interesting because even right now, I can tell you, this is a horrible, horrible time. We're all in our homes. We're all locked down, hopefully. And obviously our healthcare providers and first responders are putting their lives at risk. And there are people who have to get up every day and take the bus or whatever it is and go to work and put themselves in harm's way. And as I told you before, I don't take that lightly. But for those of us who can be sitting in my house, I'm sitting in my house right now and I'm like, I have everything I need. Everything. Nothing is actually going to happen to me. That is very, very reassuring. Yeah. And that is something that I want to give to other people. And the only way to give that to them is to helping them to stop. So I'll give you one other example. When I started working at Ariel, I started doing something. It's one of my tips for people. Okay. I told you, like, what is your necessity versus your nice to have? I started to cut my paycheck into days.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say anything I would go to buy, how many days does it take to make it?
Okay.
So every time, so it's like if you took a vacation and you're like, that's 10 days of work, it better really be worth it to you.
Yeah.
You know, if it was clothing, if it was shoes, whatever it is, I was like, how much am I willing to give of my life and time for this? And it really started to make things matter in the context of what I was having to do to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just another way of thinking about, so then when you would, sometimes for people, credit cards are not real money, and we all know it is. We are more likely to
know.
We know.
I'm saying now. Some of us learn later than you, Mellody, but yes, now we know.
But it's one of those important things that then when you start thinking about, like, is that worth it to me?
Yeah.
You know, is that worth all that hard work? Is that worth all that sweat equity? It really does start to put things in perspective. Certain things you say, no, it's not. And other things you say, I'm going to save for that.
Yeah.
I told this story that, you know, I didn't have any furniture in my apartment. I graduated from college in 1991, and I had no furniture. So in 1996, I decided I was getting a sofa.
Wait, you didn't have furniture for 5 years?
5 years. So I had a slogan that was couch in 96.
Oh.
So I was just saving for a sofa that year. So I finally got a sofa, and I lived about 10 minutes away from my office.
Uh-huh.
And at lunchtime, I would just go visit it.
Oh. Mellody, I love that. That is
because I was so
responsible.
excited. But I wanted to buy it full price, cash. I didn't want any kind of credit card debt or anything like that, and I wanted a really nice sofa. So at lunchtime, I would just go visit, sit on it, lie down, and then go back to work.
Oh my gosh, I love this. And the hardest thing is I'm sitting here like ridden with guilt because I'm like, Mellody's on this extreme and I'm way.
But the thing is, it's not about all depravity either.
Yeah.
It's about being smart. I mean, oftentimes I pull out my wallet and I have a green American Express card. People always think like, you have a green card? I'm like, yes. Why do I want to pay more than this? And I have an American Express because I like that I have to pay it off at the end of the month.
So Mellody, then I need another intervention because I definitely have the platinum one. But let me tell you.
That may help you on travel and some other things.
It
like
definitely
you can
helps on travel. That's the
it
first
does.
issue. But I had a conversation with someone. I'm going to shout him out, and hopefully he's not shamed. William Clyburn, who is Congressman Clyburn's nephew, told me when I was starting my firm, he was like, Angela, you can't whip out no debit card when you're in this industry. Like, you have to have a credit card, and it has to be a good one. I was like, oh, I can get a Platinum American Express. He's like, that's good. So, to me, the cost of the card every year, you recoup in, like, all the benefits from fine hotels or, you know,
Correct.
whatever the travel stuff is. You might disagree with me, Mellody, but that's why I've had it. The problem is now, the interest rate is high. I don't pay it off every month. And that interest rate is high, and the balance that I'm carrying on is high. So that's not good. When in a season like this, can you renegotiate interest rates on cards?
You cannot, but the card rates should be coming down unless you have a checkered credit history. Because
No, I
the
don't.
Fed
my credit score is good. It's been good for the last 15 years.
So you're probably going to see your interest rate come down some because the Federal Reserve dropped interest rates.
Okay.
Money is practically free.
Yeah.
It's called the Fed funds rate. So right now, the amount of money that banks charge each other overnight is between 0 and 0.25%.
Yeah.
That rate does affect things like home equity line of credit, auto loans. It affects credit cards, not instantaneously, but those rates will start to come down. So you'll start to probably see a better interest rate on your credit card. But you can also call the credit card company, especially if you have good credit, and ask if you can get a better rate. Okay. If you're carrying a balance right now and this is going to be very true for a lot of people, I would love you to pay off that whole amount every month. Not realistic in this environment.
Yeah.
At minimum, if you can, and if you can't, you're going to call your bank and tell them, at minimum, pay the minimum.
Yeah.
So that your credit score doesn't take a ding during this and then your interest rates go up.
Yeah.
So at minimum, pay the minimum. I don't like minimum payments because over time, it takes you years to pay off the debt, years and years. But right now, Rome is burning, as I've said before, pay the minimum. If you can't pay the minimum, get in front of it. Don't do that. I'm not looking at the bill and it's sitting there. Call the credit card company and say, here's my situation.
Yeah.
What can we do?
Yeah. What about, because you brought up home equity lines of credit, what about refinancing homes in this climate? Is that good to do?
You want to refinance for sure. Mortgage rates, they're not directly tied to the Fed funds rate, but they move directionally in the same place. And mortgage rates right now, a 30-year fixed rate or mortgage on average is somewhere around 3.2%. A 15-year is in the twos, the mid twos. You can, first of all, save a lot of money on your monthly payment. If you can refinance, that would be a very good idea. Okay. Very good. That's more money in your pocket right now. The other thing is, if you're going to buy something, if you can look at buying it versus renting. The affordability of a home to buy right now is pretty great. $1,000 mortgage is somewhere in the neighborhood of a $200,000 house. So for a 30-year mortgage, that's very affordable. And that includes insurance and some of the taxes that you have to pay. So that's all in $1,000. That's really, really, really affordable.
So what about like worthy investments? Like right now, it's a really scary market. I know for me, my retirement plan took a little hit. Yeah. So what about what should we be investing in, or should we be investing in business ideas? Like would you encourage people who have extra capital around to invest in good businesses, or do you like say here are some stocks that you should be looking at? What do you suggest?
So this is what I would say first and foremost. I think it's good that you brought up retirement because some people may have to lean on that retirement money to make ends meet. Absolutely. It's normally my money of last resort. I don't like people touching their retirement money at all. I mean, I always say you have to be on death's door, but we're at that point. And so there may be a situation where people will have to borrow from their 401k plans or take money out of an IRA, which has a lot of penalties and fees related to cashing in an IRA.
Didn't they waive the IRA in this bill?
Yes. Okay. No, they waived the mandatory withdrawal when you're 70 and a half. Oh. I think there's still the fees for withdrawal, but you know what? I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Yeah, I might have read it wrong. It might have been.
I know they waived that you do not have to take out the money.
Yeah.
I know that's one of the things that they waived. So what I would say just on that retirement piece, last resort, I mean, you're like, there's no option left before you go to that retirement money. But in terms of what I would invest in, I'd be really reticent of starting a business right now or investing in a friend's business in this environment because we just don't know how long it's going to go and it might be rough. I joked with someone the other day, I said, unless it's a grocery store or a cleaning company, it's like, I mean, those people are making money hand over fist.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that I think that if you are willing to invest in the stock market right now, nibble a little bit at a time. The money that you invest in this market right now is going to pay off in big ways over the long term because this is what we know. It's going to end. It will end. There's a vaccination on the other side of this somewhere.
Yeah.
So even if we don't know when the world opens up, we know there will be a day, probably before the next 12 months, where we will get a shot for the coronavirus. We know that. So if I were going to make an investment, and this is what we do at Ariel, we invest in publicly traded companies, the shares of companies that are either in the US or around the world. We say to ourselves, okay, look past this year, 5 years from now. Are people staying in hotels? Yes. 5 years from now, we think people will take a cruise? Yes. 5 years from now. Now, again, we have a long-term view. We're not rushing out and piling in. We're just like slowly but surely nibbling at some of these things with our view of when things normalize, and they will, what will happen? Will you go to Madison Square Garden? Will you, these are some of the things that we own. Yes. And so the question that you want to ask yourself if you are thinking of investing, I'd start with, if I'm not an investor in a mutual fund where a professional is doing it for me, and just putting a little bit in at a time. If there was a stock or something that you know a lot about in industry, that might be another way to go, as an example. Or maybe there's a product or service you like a lot, and you say, I just understand this. And so therefore, you say, maybe I should look at that business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's, you said that grocery stores and
right now, cleaning companies.
Oh, yeah. So, but what about, because the other things that are doing really well right now, well, maybe not so surprisingly, but alcohol sales are up 20%, and cannabis stores are killing it in California, like places where it's legal.
Which is interesting because heretofore that has not been a good investment, FYI. There was a whole there have been a lot of stories about, first of all, they've popped up in a lot of places. It was supposed to get rid of the black economy. It hasn't. I know I hate that they call it black economy when it's bad. But, you know, the underground. Yeah. Right. Economy. And that didn't necessarily happen. So those people who started dispensaries, etc., in places like California where it started, they haven't done that great as an investment. Now, I understand now there may be big surges because it gets delivered and things like that. It still has, you know, it's not federally
legal.
Right. And so it has all sorts of issues related to it.
Yeah.
The only publicly traded cannabis stocks you can buy are the ones that are traded in Canada, not in America.
Yeah.
So the alcohol companies have been super strong. There's no question about it.
What about content?
See, for me, though, you want to buy things that are out of favor. That's already been rewarded. So in order to make money, you want to go where the puck is going to be, not where it is. Right? That's already had its. Now I'm looking at things saying, what's in the ashes? Where are those gems that are living in the ashes that are going to rise up and be great investments? You want to buy what's out of favor, misunderstood, ignored, underfollowed, has been left for dead, but you see that it has a future, not what has been super popular right now.
Yeah. So I know folks are talking about like they're starting to cancel subscriptions with, you know, what we see as premium services now, like Hulu, Netflix, even like their companies like Spotify, Tidal, they may be starting to lose premium subscribers. You sit on a board for a company that's just getting ready to have their big launch on Monday, Quibi. Do you all have any concerns about folks like feeling like this is now a market of scarcity, even though they're at home, like they're sitting around? One of my friends posted, they said, I've watched everything on Netflix. Like, what do you say to that? What do you think is?
Well, it's interesting because Netflix has held up fairly well relative to how the market has done, precisely because people are consuming a great deal of content.
Yeah.
We don't have numbers yet on, you know, cable subscriptions and things like that yet, but in earnings season, we'll start to see what's happening there. What I would say is Quibi launches on Monday, and I think we think that people are going to want content. And so I think that we're very optimistic about the launch, but we were optimistic about the launch without a coronavirus because we think we've done something that's very, very unique. And it's called Quibi Quick Bites. Everything is less than 10 minutes. So I think that it actually works perfectly for people who are in their offices at home and they just want to break for a minute. I mean, if you're like me, you're just on the phone all day. And just to have a moment, we're not looking at CNN with coronavirus numbers and death toll, which is just so sad. You know, I think the idea that people may take a break or they're homeschooling their kids and they want 10 minutes to themselves, it'll be interesting to see how it works. But overall, the consumption of content has been, from everything we're hearing, streaming, we are told, is up 30%.
That makes sense.
And that makes total sense.
There's
right
no
now.
Sports.
That's right. There's no sports. Yeah. So I think that, you know, you don't wish for this environment in any possible way. But I think Quibi is well positioned no matter what. Yeah. I think people will want the new things, and we've got great content, and it's worth the money. And I think people feel the need. It's interesting. It's just like your alcohol point. I'm not an alcohol person, but I do think everyone feels like they deserve a treat.
Yeah.
Like, I have a little 6-year-old, and she likes to have hot chocolates every day, and she likes 6 little marshmallows in her hot chocolate. It's the coffee. It's not hot. It's cold. But anyway, we couldn't get marshmallows for weeks because the stores, like, I think any kind of treat has been sold out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those treats are in streaming, those treats are in desserts, those treats are in alcohol. I think people are looking for a little something to tide them over.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
It makes a ton
and
of
streaming
sense.
It will be one of them.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes a ton of sense. Well, I'm going to have to definitely call you back and get on my business counseling.
I'm happy to do it. We will do a one-on-one. I will sit on the phone. I'll go through the whole thing with you. There is a path forward.
Yeah.
There is. You just don't turn your back on the reality.
Okay.
You got to walk and face it head on. It will make everyone who works for you also feel better.
Yeah.
And then you'll know what you're dealing with. That's the most important thing. Don't let this thing sneak up on you. The more you can get in front of it, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, that makes sense, Mellody. Thank you for spending your birthday with me. I hope that Quibi has an amazing launch. That would be a great birthday present. And I hope that you're able to at least toast hot chocolate today with 6 marshmallows. And
Yes.
I owe you. This has been so informative,
my pleasure.
and you're great as always. So thank you so much.
Anytime. Happy to do it. Lots of love. Be safe.